Welcome back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd-related media. This is our second installment of our deep dive into Andor Season 2, today focusing on episodes 4, 5, and 6. Ever been to Ghorman? I have friends everywhere. What a festive evening. But before we get into that, we would like to welcome to the Triad, Savi from Project Stardust. Welcome. We are so happy to have you with us today.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I love your podcast, so
Oh my God!
like
stop.
very big honor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. I guess I can introduce myself, but I'm Savi, and I come from Stardust Records, which is a podcast that we like to say is built on hope. It's very Andor and Rogue One pilled, but we talk a lot of Star Wars there, but it's at our heart and soul. It's about Andor and Rogue One, but yeah, I'm excited to talk about this. Is actually the first time I'm covering Andor as of right now. So
Interesting.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's so good to see you since Celebration. We saw each other over there in Japan, so it was great to see you in person. It's one of those things that's kind of a quasi bummer, right, to see you on Zoom, because it's like, oh damn, we were in person, but one of the beautiful things, right, about Star Wars fandom and Celebration itself, that we have the opportunity to meet friends and now found family through social media and Zoom and podcasting, all this stuff. But then we have our little anchor home in Star Wars Celebration that just travels around the world, and we can make memories in person together in places we never thought we'd see. So it's good to have seen you there, and it's great to have you here now. I'm surprised though that you haven't been covering Andor Season 2 yet, though.
I know.
And to that point, I was curious. I was curious to ask you about your podcast. Did it start as a Rogue One project originally before Andor season? I mean, the first season of Andor came out.
It definitely was talked about very early on, pre-Andor. That my co-host Linz and I our friendship was basically forged by Star Wars, but mostly by Rogue One. And Andor was coming out, and we love to talk about this type of stuff, much like you guys on here. So we were like, what if we just put a microphone in front of it? So for for the first episode of Andor, that was our first episode. So we like to say that like we started because of Andor, and it grew from that. Like we've spoken about like the High Republic. We've interviewed some authors on there from different aspects of, publishing and here and there. And yeah, I think that mostly, I think I said it earlier, but like at our heart, that's what it's always going to be about. Characters just mean a lot to us, and I know that both of us see ourselves in some of them, and the stories are really special. So yeah, the moment I left Japan was when the first arc dropped.
Oh
so I
no!
was like,
right.
I know.
Sounds stressful. I'm traveling. I have to see the
I need
other
to
two
know.
episodes.
I know. So we weren't able to cover the first arc yet because this jet lag is something else.
It's brutal. But here we are, and hopefully refreshed. The con crud is fading away. We're hopefully waking up at 3 a.m. now. It's subsiding, and we're here. We're here ready to continue talking about Andor season 2, and it's been quite the arc 2. I can't believe it. We're halfway there. We're there.
I know, it's crazy.
It's over. Right?
No, I don't want to think about it.
Which to that point, right? I'm still infinitely curious to see everyone's reaction to having Andor do like these weekly arc drops, and because everyone reacts differently to it, especially like now that we're in the halfway point. I want to know your opinion, Savi, and obviously yours, Nani. Now that we're in the halfway point, has this been working out for you? Getting like the 3-episode releases, or do you long for the season 1 days of having 10 weeks of discussing Andor's journey?
Yeah. I think I'm a little bit at a crossroads because I liked the longevity of season 1 and how long it stayed in the conversation. But I think that that this season has like, I think it has a very big impact already, and we're only 2 arcs in.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people saw season 1 as it was coming out. It kind of like built its audience up as it went, and now it has this like very massive audience,
Yeah.
I think. And the pacing of these arcs they're working well as,
Mm-hmm.
as they're being advertised as a film, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's working for it. Am I sad that we're already halfway done?
Yeah.
But yesterday I sat down for 3 hours worth of a movie. So it was
Yeah.
like, it was a lot. So it's not like we're getting 1 episode for 4 weeks. We're getting 3 episodes each week for 4 weeks. So
Mm-hmm.
there will be a lot to go back and
Yeah.
watch. But
Mm-hmm.
I was nervous that the year between arcs would be a little jarring,
Mm-hmm.
but
Right.
I think that it was very smooth. I don't know what you guys thought, but I thought it worked very well.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
how did that work for you?
I wasn't really sure how they were gonna go, because we knew from the beginning that there was gonna be at least 1 year skip starting
Mm-hmm.
into this season, and then they said that we were going all the way through to Rogue One. So I didn't know how they were gonna really pace it.
Yeah.
Especially because they spent, 1 whole year. That first season was just 1 year, and then we're doing the rest of the 4 years in,
Mm-hmm.
this last season. So I think what they've been doing with like these arcs, and you skip a year every arc, is
Yeah.
is working really well for it, because the arc feels very self-contained but still a part of the story, because you don't forget it once you get into the next arc. Like, you're bringing all of that with you
Exactly.
without knowing, whatever else aspects made them grow
Mm-hmm.
during that year. And then you're carrying like all the baggage through, and I think it makes it very thoughtful that you can just get all these things, because there's so many moving parts to this season. And I mean, season 1 as well, but especially this one, like, you see so many different characters, and they've become way more important as the season has gone on. There's really very few side characters. Like, almost everybody is somebody that you care about. So the way you kind of see everything happening from different points of views, people with different goals, sometimes people with the same goal but just like going at it from different directions, and how they kind of juxtapose one to the other, and you feel very kind of satisfied so far by the end of both arcs, so, and especially this one for me, I was like really satisfied with that ending, which obviously we will get to. But I think because it feels self-contained in a way, you don't get that cliffhanger. You're like, oh my god, I need the next episode like right now, even though I would enjoy for it to be like in the conversation for longer, and we would be able to sit with it for longer. But all in all, like, the release schedule itself, I think, was a smart way to do it. So what about you?
Yeah, it doesn't not work. It definitely does, and even season 1. I mean, and I think we've discussed it before. Even season 1 was kind of like broken up in unofficial arcs in of themselves. So it's not, it's not. I mean, the Clone Wars also did it before. It's not an unheard concept in Star Wars to kind of have these arc structures to an overarching series, but it's just that selfish part of me that just wants to live in this world a lot longer. But I have to admit that it might not work as well, because even though last season we did have those arcs, because it was in that 1 year chunk, and kind of like all the arcs bled into the next one, it was kind of easier to have that be spread out, because they bleed into each other in a way that these kind of don't. These kind of have to live together. So I begrudgingly accept that
the decision
that the arc structure is probably the best, but I still question Tony, and I don't know if this was a Tony thing, even though Tony keeps saying it was a him thing. But I question it really. It might be a Tony and Disney thing of being, let's bring it back from 5 to 2.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like, I feel like there's still something in there. And like we said last episode, this is with the benefit of having seen the whole season. So as we said last time,
I haven't. This is as far as I got.
We're gonna I'm gonna do my best as last episode to maintain my review of solely this episode and ignore what comes next. But in terms of just seeing it as a whole and what the release could have been. I do wonder if Disney was just like, hey, we don't have the money and time to keep going with this series because we kind of are shifting gears with Disney Plus and and Star Wars going back to theatrical. So I wonder if there was like a tug and pull there between Tony and the Disney hats to be like, hey, maybe let's find the happy medium and do the 2-season thing. But I don't know, conspiracy theory. I don't know. I'm not an insider. I don't work at the Hollywood Reporter, so.
Diego, back during season 1, said that he would probably die if he did 5 seasons.
5 seasons of it.
Yeah, he was like, I don't think that at my age, which I don't think he's very old at all. I think
he looks exactly the same as he did during Rogue One.
I know.
Exactly.
I mean,
better, probably. I think better. To be honest.
I think better too. In that first arc, when we were watching it the first episode, we were watching it in the celebration stage. I was like, did they de-age him? Like he looks younger.
He looks amazing.
He did, but
that's a Latin blood. It's
exactly. It's when you're not problematic.
Exactly.
And Gus and I have had the luck of seeing him in person, so he really does look that good.
Wonderful. I mean, maybe a little Botox here, a little Botox there, but not overdone. It's not overdone. He's doing it tastefully.
He's in Mexico, so he's got access to all of that.
On the cheap.
Yeah.
But he could do it. He could do 5 more seasons. If Tom Cruise is, I don't know, like 60 or something, and he's still doing
Mission Impossible
and breaking his ankle and running from point A to point B, Diego can do it. Come on. Anyway, but that's neither here nor there because they're not gonna do it. He's gonna die in 3 weeks in Rogue One. So, so unfortunately,
I know that's so sad.
I mean, who knows? Maybe they're gonna retcon it. Who knows? They're gonna get Rogue 2, and it's just Diego lives. But let's.
Let's get into
it's not it's speculation, not a spoiler, guys. Sorry. But let's get into Arc 2. Last time when we left our heroes and villains, we rescued Bix from Wheat Planet. Manu Rai, I think, was the name of that planet. Brasso, a fallen, no brick for Brasso.
Fallen hero.
Dedra and Cyril are doing weird things and putting Cyril's mom in her place. Krennic's being a queen, Mon Mothma stressed out, and Luthen is just Luthen. And now, we have like all our characters in different spots. We're finally going to Ghorman, and things go down. Things go down in Ghorman, even though not the thing. We haven't approached the massacre yet, but things have happened. An old version of the massacre was acknowledged, which was cool for fans of the expanded universe, but Savi, what do you think of this arc and the 3 episodes and where it took all of our characters in this Ghorman Part 1 arc, I guess?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I went into it expecting that this arc would be the Ghorman massacre, at least by the end. So I was actually pleasantly surprised that we would have a little bit more time with it. Especially because I think that some outlets have said that this is going to be 5 episodes total, I think. And this is Beau Willimon, who I'm a really big fan of already. And Ariel Kleiman is one of my favorite directors, especially from his work on Yellow Jackets. So this was like the arc I was very excited to see come to fruition. And one of my favorite characters is Bix, and she has like such a compelling story to me, and immediately kind of jumping in and seeing where she's been since last arc. Obviously we left her off in like a very dark place, and I loved these moments between Cassian and Bix, not even just from like a romantic perspective, but as somebody who loves Rogue One and Cassian as a character, to see him like loved unconditionally and like receive and give it was like very nice and comforting to watch, I think. And these might be like one of his only comforting moments that he has throughout the season. Right. So I was really pleased to see like how they've kind of worked up a routine. But summarizing all of that, I think my favorite aspect of it was that we learned that Cassian is having a difficult time in his own head telling the difference between war and protecting Bix.
Right.
And one of my favorite things that has been said about this season from multiple actors and the creators is that like it's a lot about love, and it's really, really human to see that unfold. Like it's not just a bunch of spy stuff, which we are getting
Right.
a little bit here and there,
Yeah.
but it's the like personal aspects of what is behind the scenes of war, or like him coming home and like them having like a very silly intimate moment where he's like
Yeah.
taking off his jacket and being very playful and like cooking. And I don't know, I think that was probably my favorite part of the arc, and I loved revisiting that. Like every time we would come home with them, it felt like kind of we were there as a family.
Yeah. Mhm.
I don't know, maybe that's like the Latin Americanness of it, but
Somos
yeah.
nosotros.
Yeah.
The homey part of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're in the kitchen with all of them, and
Yeah.
that's where all the
Same.
memories are made.
Exactly.
But now,
Mhm.
what was your experience with Arc 2?
Yeah. So for me, it was really hard to watch Bix kind of just slowly disappear into herself during this arc. Like Savi was saying, we do get some of these like really homey, very beautiful moments between them. I mean, that scene where they're just like kind of staring at each other and touching hands, like you get so much like emotional connection from just that one scene that you would get from like an eternity of conversations between two characters to like establish romance. Like that one scene was almost perfect. But the isolation is getting to her so hard. And I mean, back at the other planet, you could see that she was having the nightmares and everything, but she was surrounded by family. You know, she had found a safe place, and now she's, you know, with Andor doing mission to mission. Sometimes she has to stay all by herself. They're in this like horrible apartment in, you know, the heart of evil of Coruscant at this point.
Yeah.
You know, and you can see how all of that, you know, affects her, and how, you know, she's, you know, drugging herself out to be able to sleep. And you just kind of see her sink into herself, and how Luthen notices it as well. But I love that Cassian like calls him on it. It's like, you need to help me fix this situation. Figure it out. Like you need to do something, because I'm giving it all and I'm not losing Bix like because of it. So
yeah. Well,
so it was kind of
Sorry.
No, say it.
They both see so much potential in her, and
Yeah.
that made me really happy to see that. Like they see her strength and they see it in her. Like it's very palpable to them.
Yeah, especially when you see, when Luthen, no, we love this, interrupt. When Luthen goes to recruit her, like the only reason he doesn't take her with him is because he realizes that there's drugs and that she's in a weak moment right now, and he doesn't want to make it worse, which he kind of makes it worse anyway, because then she feels like she's weak and it ends up in an argument with Cassian and all the things that happen. But it all feels very real. I mean, it makes them feel even more like real characters, because these are real things that people struggle with. And that's why I think this show and why Rogue One has resonated with so many people, because they're not afraid to talk about the hard things that, you know, can happen to anybody in any situation. But then you put it in a Star Wars world in the middle of a revolution in a galaxy far, far away. And, you know, it's kind of 10 times worse, especially since we've always talked about how, you know, everybody needs therapy in Star Wars. And these characters, I feel like, especially because of the isolation and the constant sense of paranoia. So that was rough to see, but it was really cool to see, you know, Ghorman, and to see how Dedra and Cyril's relationship is kind of, you know, working out so far, which I think it's so strange, but it works in a weird way. To see how a new rebellion is starting in a place that never thought they would have to rebel, because it is a planet of wealth and privilege, and having to see them like clumsily kind of like struggle along. And then we have a lot of really, you know, beautiful scenes also with Cinta and Vel, who finally kind of like find each other and acknowledge their relationship. And it all ends very tragically, because of course Star Wars can't let people be happy. But but I think a lot of things happen in this, and I think it shows a lot of what not to do when you're in a rebellion, and how some people care or not, because the whole plan is to, you know, bait people into, you know, external rebellions to come into Ghorman, so that they can then, you know, happily do the massacre. Nobody will care because they're bad people. But the fact that Luthen doesn't care either way, like that conversation with Cassian where it's like, a planet like Gorman actually joining the rebellion will be so huge for us. And then, Cassian being like, but what if it goes down in flames? Oh, it'll burn very brightly. So, I mean, he doesn't care either way, it's just a tool to forward the rebellion. And, even Luthen, who's supposed to be a good guy, is kind of a bad guy. So,
And I think that's why Luthen is not the most important
very
character.
compelling, but very compelling. Yeah.
Obviously, Cassian is the most important character. He's the namesake of the show. But
Mhm.
but Luthen is the knot that's tying all these different strings together. And in many ways, the counterpoint or a balance to Saw Gerrera and like the ways in which we're fighting fascism and we're fighting against the Empire and the heart of it, right? And all these characters, Bell, Cinta, Bix, Cassian, Mon, to an extent, they're all fighting within the humanity of the rebellion and like what it means to fight for love, like you were saying, Savi, before, as opposed to just fighting for the ideal. And I think that's a really important reframing, right, of rebellion and the show, because the first season and in many ways the first arc, the first arc is the transition into this one, right? But the first season was about how we are on, and Marva says it in her speech, right? It's like how us from the outside look at the empire and fascism and how we start to react to it from the fringe, right? And now season 2 is about like how we're living in it and how we react to it once we're inside that machine. And it's really interesting to see then that it's not about necessarily just fighting the Last Jedi thing. It's not just fighting what you hate. It's saving what you love imagery, which it's I wouldn't even call it a cliche because we actually don't talk about that. We just talk about the rebellion versus the empire. We don't talk about the relationships and the friends and everything that are sacrificial lambs in Luthen's eyes, but are really the things that we're fighting for. Because if we don't fight for those things, then really nothing else matters. So it's really poignant how the show has been framing all of this, especially with the losses that we're going through along the way, and showing like how anticlimactic losses can be in terms of like the action of the show or the action of rebellion or the act of rebellion, but how impactful it is to the individual, right? And I'm talking about, spoiler alert, Cinta. And we'll talk about it in more detail. But it's really interesting then to reframe that with victory, right? Because on one side, Vel just won her love back, and kudos to Disney and Lucasfilm for finally saying gay and letting the gays kiss on screen, even though you're gonna then kill it. But at least they kissed on screen. So 1 point for the DEI committee that they're disassembling. But then on the flip side, then you have like that scene with Luthen and Clea being like joyful and playful after their victory, getting back the listening device from Golden, and being like, oh, we maybe should have killed Krennic when we had the chance, and being joyful and jovial in that moment. It's kind of like those interesting contrasts about how all these dichotomies exist at the same time during this horrible oppression that they're all going through, but that is life, and it's a thing that we're kind of living through right now. Also,
you have to find joy where you can.
We're seeing all these horrible things happening around us, and how governments are trying to systematically oppress, but we still kind of do have, unwilling or willingly or not, we still have moments of laughter and joy that we have to revel in, and then another person right next to you doesn't. So I think the show's being very, very, very intentional, right, and showing all these different aspects, and obviously with Bix and like her journey from the end of Ferrex Road in episode 12, and then all of a sudden like the end of her recovery in episode 6 on this season, with finally confronting Dr. Gorst. It's just like, like all these battles that we have to not just fight in the front lines of the war, but also within the front lines of the heart and the mind. So I don't know, very, very deep. So I commend Tony Gilroy and Bob Willerman for what they've achieved with these 3 episodes, because there's so much depth and so much to talk about.
Yeah.
But I wanted to talk a little bit about Gorman, right? Because it's been mentioned so much, and season 1, Saw Gerrera mentions the Gorman front. Obviously, Star Wars Rebels, we know that Mon Mothma talked about the Gormans too. So the expanded universe, there's all this, who the hell are the Gormans? And we finally, we're finally here. We arrived at Gorman, which I say it every single time we're talking about Andor. The production design by the team, by Luke Hall's production design team is out of this world. And thank you so much to StarWars.com for being on it and like publishing immediately the declassified and like all the behind the scenes things. To kind of confirm the things that I was like thinking, like, oh my God, is this supposed to be like 1930s, 1970s, Mediterranean Europe, post World War thing, and all of a sudden you read everything and you're like, oh my God, these guys are geniuses, and it's such a beautiful and immersive world. But then to also see like both of you were saying, how the rebellion shifts, right, from the ragtag, downtrodden rebels in the forest that we see in Arc 1 to all of a sudden like the posh elites, and all of a sudden how tariffs touch them, and when all of a sudden when they're invaded, now all of a sudden they care about a rebellion, what rebellion looks for them, which is a different outlook from the rebellion of other people. So I don't know, what was your guys' reaction to the Gorman front, and everything that has to do with that, including, right, Cyril infiltrating the group and Cassian not being impressed with them? There's a lot. So, like, attack as you will. Savi, what do you think of Gorman?
I think, honestly, the part that really stuck out to me the most, which I feel like is going to be a very big, I guess, inspiration for the rest of the season. I can't think of the word for it, but showing that organized rebellion is better than just attacking with no plan at all. Because yes, you could have all of these meetings discussing like how you're feeling and how it's upsetting you and like what you want to do, and this anger and not acting on it in a way where there's preciseness and like thought and care can lead to events like losing Cinta. And you said this earlier about how sometimes when people die, like it's not a heroic death, it's just very abrupt and sudden, and that is war. And it was really sad to see Cinta die that way, because it was right after Cinta and Vel had rekindled this way. But going back to Gorman, because I could talk about Vel and Cinta all the time, but they were so fascinating to me because of the inspiration behind them. Like, I read from, I think it was from StarWars.com, that their language, Gore, was inspired by like French phonetics, and it reminded me.
It sounds French.
Yeah. For a second, I did think that they were speaking because I don't know.
Star Wars has a kink for French revolutionaries. This is the third ones I think that we've seen, because obviously the Twi'leks in Clone Wars, French accents. The revolutionary people in Skeleton Crew were also French accents. So this is our third French revolutionaries.
And it reminded me a lot of Canary when the language was built off of Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese. So that was very interesting to see that they've like also brought that into a different aspect of the galaxy, especially because apparently the actors are like speaking Gore to each other off camera.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so I specifically loved the scenes with Cassian on Gorman, because it also shows you how far Cassian has come in this. Because the part where, I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, but he's played by a German actor.
He's in Inglourious Bastards. I'll find the name. Yeah.
He asked Cassian, like, have you ever done anything like this before? And Cassian laughs, and he's like, what, like stealing? And it was like such a, you realize like how far we've come since the Cassian on Ferrix and that first arc there, where Cassian wasn't organized and he was messy and like he made a lot of decisions based off of like just spur of the moment. And now we have this Cassian that's like very precise and he puts a lot of thought into the things. It's always the next step. Like he's always thinking the next step before he takes it. So it was just so I don't know, just like watching this Cassian become the man that he is so smoothly and like it was very prominent in this arc for me, I think. And I'm really anticipating to see like how his impact mixed with Vel's impact and Cinta's death and like how all of their, tellings will inspire them throughout the massacre because I am really curious to know like how that's going to play out.
Yeah.
Especially because now that we know that this won't be the first one, like this is the second. So
yeah.
I don't know, it's getting intense.
It's intense.
If this arc was intense, it's not a spoiler to say that the rest of the season is not gonna be it's not gonna be a traditional Disney story. But yeah, I found it, by the way. It's the character he plays is Carol Rylance, and it's played by Richard Sammel or Samuel. I don't know how to pronounce it. Apologies.
Yeah, who's the head of the Ghorman front at this point? Yeah. Which was kind of the whole point of Luthen sending Cassian there because he's never met him personally, and Luthen doesn't understand either how a rebellion works in a planet like Ghorman. So that's why he sent Cassian, and he was so masterful. I love how he says to Biggs that the character he was playing was so pretty. The outfits and everything. Very pretty. And obviously he has to fit into this super posh, world that he's walking into. And I really loved what you were saying, Savi, about how now he's so calculating right now. I mean, that conversation that he has with the guy's daughter, as soon as she sits down and he's just like, you have no idea who you're talking to. Like, you have no idea if you just sitting here just killed your entire family and anybody that you work with because you don't know. You know? So there were so many little things about how he's become a spy master now and how he like analyzes everything. And just from 2 days being there, Luthen's like, oh, you've made your analysis in like 2 days. She's like, yeah, they're that unready, And it shows as well when Cyril is, giving his report to ISB and saying like, they're very inexperienced, but very eager. And it's like, oh, that's a quality in so many people. But that's exactly what's happening. They feel like they started late and now they're rushing to catch up to everybody else. And they're screwing up on the way, because they don't know what they don't know. So they're just kind of like, they don't, clearly they're being fed misinformation and all these things. And they don't even stop to think about the possibility that it's misinformation because they're just never been in a position to have to question everything around them, So I think it was really masterfully done. And there's so many layers because Cyril doesn't even really know what he's actually doing because Dedra isn't telling him. So, I mean, there's like layers and layers of secrecy. And it was intense. And then one of my favorite scenes actually is when you're seeing what's happening with Vel and Sintra and them trying to rob the transporter and it's all very action packed and everything, like you're freaking out if everything's going to go right, but at the same time you're seeing what's happening in Skulden's party and trying to like debug the stress of everybody getting closer and closer and it's not budging and you go back and forth between different levels of anxiety. So I thought that was really cool to show like how different moments of tension can happen, some with actual action and other ones without. And I think I was more terrified at the party than I was at the fighting scene.
100%.
100%. Yeah, I know. The moment Clea's hand started bleeding,
I was like, oh no.
I like sat up on the couch. I was like, okay, now we're really locked in. Like she's willing to like lose her hand at this point. It was very intense.
Otherwise they were going to totally die if she didn't pull that off,
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, and good for Clea for being a boss on that one and telling Lonnie what to do because poor Lonnie is out of his depth. I mean,
definitely.
We need all the heroes we can get, Lonnie. But oh my God, he almost didn't make it on that one. But I wanted to go back to Ghorman for a little bit just because I just kind of wanted to keep talking about, especially because
Yeah.
there's a couple of things that I think are really interesting about Gore, and one is the, like I was saying, like the production design on it, which was amazing. And in terms of that, it's just like how the sets and everything were just like telling the story of Gore, right? Because in
Yeah.
even, I mean, even if you don't know about design and you don't know about architecture and architecture history, like you still kind of understand, right, that this is a place of history and a place
Mhm.
of wealth in many in how the set pieces were designed and established. And and obviously kudos to Michael Wilkinson as well for the
Mhm.
costume designing, because it complements all of the architecture that
Yeah.
Luke Hall was doing there as well. But lots of little details that I really loved about that were just the splayed columns, and it hasn't been confirmed in any of the things that I've read so far. But to me, it was just a clip, in seeing the trailers before and seeing like how all the columns like split into many different branches. I was just like, oh, that's an interesting cue. Like, where does that come from? But then when you see like all the videos about the Gorman spiders and like all the threads and
Yeah.
everything, I was like, oh man, that is good, delicious
Yeah.
production design to kind of use all this lore to then inspire like how all the buildings are then designed, because it's like either it's evoking the spiders or it's evoking the threads. But you see like how the culture of Gore and the Gore the of Gorman and the Gore are just expressed everywhere. But also an interesting tidbit about all of this Gorman culture and history that we've been talking about is the obviously we're heading into the Gorman massacre, but in terms of history of Gorman, we know that in the expanded universe, the Gorman massacre occurred in a. I mean, and now it's not a spoiler to say because this is talked about in these episodes.
Yeah.
But it's called the Tarkin massacre in this one, which I think was a great acknowledgement of kind of bridging the gap between
Yeah.
the expanded universe, previous history,
Yeah.
but then kind of establishing your own narrative and your own canon with what's happening, which I think is hilarious for Tony Gilroy, a man who's notoriously doesn't care about Star Wars and anything that has to do with Star Wars history, and now being so careful and cognizant about all these little pieces and being respectful to tie into it neatly into everything that's pre-established, and have the Tarkin massacre be such a important and poignant thing for the Gore to acknowledge in their history and all the characters, but also in the architecture, because there's something in the architecture in that Plaza of Remembrance, I think it was called, like all those sculptures that are there, and even like that spherical, there's like that cylindrical one that's split, but
Mhm.
then obviously that big, more bronze one that's in the background. And actually, I didn't catch this. I have to give credit where credit's due. This was my partner who, she knows much more about art than I do, but she immediately identified the inspiration of all this art. And they're pieces of sculpture that are inspired by real world art and sculptures called Sphere Within a Sphere. And these are sculptures done by an Italian artist called Arnaldo Pomodoro, which I think is also wonderful, the synergy in terms of like production, because Luke Hall and Tony Gilroy say that Gorman is inspired by Italian architecture and from Mediterranean architecture, but then to have an Italian artist that also does these sculptures to kind of complement that is even kind of more telling. But I think the telling thing about the sculptures that this artist did, and I'm quoting here, is that these sculptures, and he does them specifically as spheres, but the aesthetic is still there, right, in the show. But these spheres can be seen as promising rebirth of a less troubled and destructive world. Pomodoro describes his desire for building these sculptures, stating, breaking these perfect magic forms in order to reveal their internal ferment, mysterious and alive, monstrous and yet pure. I want to create a discordant tension, a conflict with the polished shine, a unity composed of incompleteness, which it's in a plaza remembering like this massacre and this
Yeah.
horrible moment in their history, and then to acknowledge a piece of art from like our world and our history that talks to the themes of the show so beautifully. It's just like I just wanted to put that out there because it's one of those things that are just beautiful, and like if people don't notice it, it just goes uh, without being known, because it's production design, and good production design is invisible in many ways, but some pieces are just too important to let go. So I just wanted to kind of touch upon that, because it's just that world building that Tony and Luke Hall and the rest of the production and design team have done is just incredible.
Mhm.
um but yeah, let's go into Luthen and Clea and Mon Mothma, and then the Skolden dinner party with our Queen Krennic showing up with this little sash, so beautiful, and to kind of like cap off the whole architecture thing, I think it's hilarious that the building that they're in is also a real world building in Spain, in Valencia, by architect Santiago Calatrava, which is also part of the same complex that we see in other scenes of Coruscant, which I think is hilarious that part of the same building split in two and made appear like different ones, just a little architectural nerdy thing to mention there. But before going into that scene, Mon and Perrin are having a really fun conversation about having to cram in I don't know how many months of disingenuousness into one evening or something, which I thought like Perrin's getting some good comedy bits this season. So we still don't like him, but but he's funny. He's funny. I would have a beer with him. But then they arrive. They arrive at the gallery, and there's a character that finally shows up, and we have been talking about this character being necessary to this show, especially if it's tying into Rogue One. But this character doesn't show up in the way that we were expecting, and Discord has been interesting. Discourse, sorry, has been interesting around him because, hey, spoiler alert, lo and behold, Jimmy Smits did not, in fact, return as our Space Pappy #1, Bail Organa.
Bail Organa
Was unfortunately recast as Space Pappy #3, I guess, or #4. I've lost count of how many Space Pappies we have at this point. But Benjamin Bratt comes in representing Peru to be Bail Organa on this season. So it was jarring for me. But how did you guys feel about it? Nani, let's start with you. How did you feel about the recast of legendary Bail Organa?
Yeah, so we actually had a whole episode like talking about Jimmy Smits and about, Bail Organa is like, one of our original Space Poppies and how, we really wanted him to return. So I was really excited about, seeing Bail again. We mistakenly thought it was that scene where she's talking to the senator from Ghorman. And then it's like, oh, okay, clearly not him. And then when you see Benjamin Bratt and he's walking towards and they first say like Senator Organa, and I was like, oh, is it not Bail? It's like a brother. But then they're like Bail. And I was like, oh, okay. So it's Bail, but it's not Jimmy Smits. Like, what's happening? So I was a little caught off guard. I think I don't know if it's true that Jimmy Smits wasn't able to be in it because of scheduling conflicts.
That's the story.
That's the story.
Which I'll choose to believe for now until proven otherwise.
I will be, skeptically optimistic that that is the truth.
Yeah.
Benjamin Bratt looked amazing, by the way. So
interesting.
Okay. I can't fault it. It's a different take on the character. He seemed a little bit more kind of aggressive, I think, than
interesting. Okay.
Really? Just from he was literally on screen for what, less than a minute?
But I think it was a worthy minute.
Yeah, no. It was telling.
Yeah.
But I feel like you can't really you needed to have Bail Organa be in this show. So, I mean, if it was because of casting issues, whatever it was, we needed the character, and you can't just write off a character because you don't have the actor that you want for it, honestly. Yep. So all in all, just really happy to see Bail Organa back. Sad that it isn't Jimmy Smits, but more happy that we still get Bail anyway.
Yeah.
Savi, what about you?
I had a similar reaction. I think I was kind of leaning both ways. I'm a really big Solo fan as well, and we all know that a lot of people are really skeptical about Alden Han, especially because we all know and love Harrison really, really fondly. And there was like an article or something when like a social embargo lifted or whatever that had said that there was a big recast and who it was, and at first, I was nervous because I too love Jimmy and I love the entrance that he has in Rogue One and how like when you know him, like when you know who that is, it's like very impactful. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And while I do love him and love how he plays Bail, especially in Kenobi and in Rogue One, like I am really excited to see this version of Bale, which is not necessarily a Bale that we've seen on screen before, because
Yeah.
this is a timeline that we haven't necessarily like explored with so much depth. So I am very excited to see what Benjamin is going to bring to the character that we haven't seen
Mhm.
already. And I also think that this could invite like Bale to be in future projects and different projects where he can, you know, kind of mold this character anew, I think. And I'm excited to see if they're going to be pulling from other places, like
Mhm.
from Princess of Alderaan or anything like that. It's because they obviously haven't shied away from anything publishing wise. So I don't know. And I don't know if you guys have read it yet, but with Mask of Fear out, it'll be really interesting to see like
Very
their
good. Very
yeah,
good.
it'll be very interesting to see like how it translates from the first book in the trilogy to
Yeah.
them in Andor. So, because it's not super far. I mean, it is far, but it's not that far. So
Right.
it'll be cool to see how it connects.
No, yeah, I agree. I agree. And yes, Mask of Fear, go read it right now. It's so
Yeah.
good. Alexander Freed, one of the best Star Wars authors. I mean, I love Alphabet Squadron, so I was
Mhm.
very excited for Mask of Fear, and he absolutely crushes it. It's so good. Like, and the characterization of like Saw, Mon Mothma, and Bale in those books, in that book, is incredible. So if you haven't
Yeah.
read it, go right now. Go to your library and pick it up. But yeah, no, I was very surprised when that scene happened, and all of a sudden Benjamin Bratt's walking up with that, with that Alderaanian swagger, and all of a sudden Mom says, "He's like Senator Organa." I'm just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was like, whoa, holy cannoli! Like, what's going on? What's going on here?
Yep.
So, I think we all have like that natural reaction when we
Yeah.
have our characters that we like and we have the actor that we like, and suddenly you're expecting the thing that you like, and you don't get it. We all kind of
Suddenly
have
it's like,
we all have a visceral reaction,
yeah.
but then, you have to kind of remove yourself from that for a little bit and then kind of take it at face value and for what it is, as opposed to what you think it should be.
Right.
And, once I rewatched, and I was rewatching it like before we started recording, and for me, I was just like, oh, okay. I feel like Benjamin Bratt got it. Obviously, I don't want to talk
Mhm.
about like if he shows up or not in future
Uh-huh.
episodes, but at least in this one, like I think he crushed it. I think he nailed it. I
Yeah.
think he got the vibe of Jimmy Smith's, of Bail Organa,
Mhm.
or because right now, Jimmy is Bale, so
Yeah.
they're one and the same at this point. So I feel that
Yeah.
Benjamin kind of got the vibe right, and like once
Mhm.
you rewatch it and you kind of take the face of the man out and just get the aura of the
Focus on the
character,
character. Yeah.
you
I have to
feel it. And I
rewatch
was just
that
like,
scene. Yeah. It is.
okay, I get it.
Yeah.
This is Bail Organa. The only thing I will say in terms of not necessarily a nitpick, but a thing that kind of takes me out a little bit of Benjamin Bratt as Bale is that, you know, I, and it's not his fault, genetics are, they affect us differently. And, Jimmy Smith's genetics, he's a moose of a man, he has
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a physical presence that some of us wish we had, and
Yeah.
the man has broad shoulders, okay, so when he walks in a room, it. And Benjamin Bratt, he's a skinny guy, he's a little scrawny tall guy, and he doesn't have that physical presence of physicality that
Yeah.
Jimmy Smith has, which kind of takes me out of it just a smidge. The more
Yeah.
the more I'll watch it, the more I'll get into it. But it almost feels like the costumes were made for Jimmy, and then they don't fit Benjamin
They're
Bratt
like
all that
drowning his
well.
frame.
So he's just
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like a little kid wearing his dad's suit, a little bit. Um,
That's
but
probably why he came off as more intense. Like you
yeah,
said,
yeah.
Yeah.
he
And
Yeah.
had
Because he
like
was like a little bit more. Yeah.
yeah.
instead of shoulders, he needs to do arms to
Yeah,
occupy the same physical space. But
exactly.
it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
And who knows if it was a scheduling thing? Maybe it was actually uh,
Mhm.
uh,
You never know.
uh, Jimmy asked for X amount, and Disney was just like, not for this amount of screen time, and then they parted ways amicably by just saying scheduling. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm not an insider, but it's just me thinking, because, like, I mean, I don't want to knock Jimmy down, but what's he I mean, what's he really doing that he can't say yes to the wars?
Well, I mean, but it could also be what Savi was saying, that they want to take the character in a different direction, and they wanted to get ahead of that and already start to switch the actor out.
Yeah.
So, it could be a million different things, but let's just be happy that we still got some Bail Organa anyway.
I think, and I appreciate that they also got a Latino person to portray the character, and kind of kept the essence of representation there alive. So 2 points in the DEI department that is slowly being dismantled at Disney.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. But anyway,
that was one of the first questions I had asked when somebody said that he was recast. I was like, but is he still Latino? Like,
por favor.
I know,
please
like,
be Latino, por favor.
I know. I
At
was
least.
like, I'm okay with it as long as he's still brown.
Leia still has a Latin dad, so
exactly.
So that's good. That's why she's still spicy. But we're happy we're happy that we got Bale back. Maybe not in the way that we wanted him, but we're happy. We're happy, and hopefully we get to see him more in Andor in the future, be it in the face of Jimmy or in the face of Benjamin. But anyway, I that whole scene though inside was just a smorgasbord of amazingness, because we have so many things going on at the same time, with Krennic on one hand, Clea and Lonnie on the other, Mon Mothma with Perrin, and then Mon Mothma fighting Krennic ideologically, with Perrin rolling his eyes in the background, Luthen just salivating at the whole situation. So I want to get everyone's thoughts on it. Savi, like, what was your reaction to everything that was happening at Skolden's party?
Yeah, well, like I said, I stood up. Like, there were definitely some moments where
the tension was insane.
Yeah, it was very, very palpable, and I felt it very viscerally, like I was in the room with them. And I really have to admire, I really have to call out the writers and the producers, and that's not an easy thing to do, to to oh my God, what's the word? To show how palpable like those situations can be when it comes to like the anxiety that's coursing through those moments. And the actors also do such an excellent job with it. Like Elizabeth Dulau, Clea is such a standout for me this season, and I think that her eyes, like, she has this like look in her eyes that almost scares me a little bit, because she's so intense, and all of this whole party, she wasn't there for anything else besides business, and she had this plan in mind, and she's very precise, and we're talking about it earlier, but I just really admire how her and Luthen work together. I think that their relationship is really, really showing this season, because back in the first season we are like, okay, they're business partners, but we don't know much else outside of that. But like, their dynamic this season is very, very rich and interesting, and I thought wouldn't be as interesting as I thought. I didn't think I would like it as much as I do. And it's one of my favorite dynamics to see. They remind me a lot of I think Tony made this like relation first, but they're very like Apple in the Garage, like both Steves, and how like it's built off of that, and like where that's going to go, and like the conflict that comes with that, like creating something from so small to a conglomerate. I don't know. Yeah, and then with Perrin and Mon, they're also so fascinating to me as like a failed marriage, like it just like a very, very, it's like a dumpster fire that you can't
stop watching
from. It's like, but I want to see where this goes and what happens with it. And one thing that's like really sticking out with me, and I'm gonna quote Mask of Fear, it's not a spoiler or anything, but Mon Mothma says, like, in her thoughts, or it's written, that even though she's fallen out of love with Perrin, like, he's still her salvation. And I do really, really wonder, like, is Perrin going to get like growth? Like, is he going to get like something more? And I'm very, very excited to see where that's going. And I'm like keeping my eye very sharply on them, because their dynamic is fun to watch. And
Yeah.
the first arc, the last episode, when she's dancing and he's looking at her, and at first, like, he's thinking that she's really into the party, but then he sees. So it's
Yeah.
like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
he's not a good guy and we don't like him, but
Yeah.
he doesn't not pay attention. And I
Mm-hmm.
think
Yeah.
that, like, I'm really anticipating to see where that goes. And also,
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Keep
Go ahead.
going.
Yeah, keep
Just-
going. This is your show. All right, keep going, please.
I could talk about this all day. You guys brought a yapper onto your show, but
It's fantastic. We love it.
me too. Just with Krennic, like Krennic seeing him in his element, I guess. Like I loved him in Rogue One, but seeing him this way, and when Ben Mendelsohn said that he would be playing him in like a fruitier way,
Yeah, yeah.
I was
It
like,
works though.
It's
It's
so
so
perfect.
good.
Yeah, it is so good. It's like,
All the side eye he was just giving Mon like during the whole scene, it was just incredible.
I know. Just everyone's facial expression, like I feel like if you pause on a clip where it's just all of them, they're all going to have like a very nasty expression on their face for different reasons, and it's just like a fantastic ensemble cast. Like all of them
Yeah.
together in one
Mhm.
room, like I would have done anything to be a fly on the wall.
Oh, definitely.
And you can tell that everyone's just having a blast doing everything because you look at Stellan Skarsgård and he's also doing his little things in the background.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Even the actor that plays Perrin, you can see him like overacting, like when Mon
Yeah.
is talking to Krennic, being like, "Oh, Mon, go, like calm down."
Yeah.
So it's amazing. But Nani, what about you? What did you think of this golden party?
Well, I mean, it was it was honestly the scene that I didn't know I needed because it was so good. I mean, I agree basically with everything that Savi said, and I just like to say, I mean, acknowledge how much power was in that room at that one time, and it could have gone sideways at any moment.
Mhm.
And just to add a little bit to what Krennic being played like a total queen makes total sense because that's probably what he was when he was, on top of the world and everything he was doing was going right for him. But
Mhm.
then we get to see him in Rogue One, probably, obviously terrified for his life because things are not going as well. And that's why we get like a much more like stick up his ass version of himself. So it's really great to see, him having really have fun with this character that we all kind of love to hate, and seeing him interact with all these other powerhouse actors because everybody has been so good. I mean, they were amazing season 1 as well. And they're, amazing actors in their own right. But everybody's just gone kind of like the extra mile this season. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I loved it. I love the scene. And to put in so much tension into a scene where not really much is happening. There's no action. It's just the conversation and the tension and the fear of, what will happen if they catch us with a background of, these Goliaths like talking about their points of view, and they're going to end up at completely opposite sides once the rebellion actually begins. So
Yeah.
I thought it was Savi.
Yeah, well, that reminded me of that specific scene was that what Clea was doing and the artifact that she was touching, and apparently there's some like speculation or whatever. A lot of people are thinking that that artifact is particularly meaningful to her because it has like a connection to her background of some sort, or like Elizabeth Dulau has said that like Clea's eyeshadow is an eyeshadow, it's like eye markings.
Mhm.
Oh, so maybe she does come from like a visually impaired culture, society.
Yeah, I don't know. So I feel like that would add depth to that scene as well, but
Oh, there's so much going on in that scene, just with the artifacts in general. Like we could go on just about that scene for hours, honestly, because it was like so good.
Yeah,
I know.
Savi, correct me if I'm wrong, because I immediately purge information from my brain the minute I finish a book. But am I wrong in remembering that Mask of Fear establishes that Mon Mothma when she went to university, she studied history or anthropology or something like that?
I don't remember.
'Cause I know that there was like a couple of scenes in the book when she's in. I think I remember something like that because that planet that Bale goes to is like this ancient planet that says spoiler alert, I guess, a planet that says devastated by Saw and Bale and all that stuff. And I think she mentions that
Yeah.
she was either he's a big history buff or went to university for history or anthropology, something like that. I just wanted to confirm, and I'm making that up
Well, I
because
mean, it would make sense into how maybe she ended up meeting Luthen to begin with.
well,
Yeah.
exactly, because
Mhm.
it ties in so good to
Yeah.
all of that scene. Because then when she says like, "Oh, this is my history teacher, Luthen is after all my history teacher," or something like that. But then when they're
Yeah.
at the gallery and she's talking about history with Krennic and all these things, I'm just like little subtle things about characters' histories that we
Yeah.
kind of know through other media, then like we get to see in live action, which are like little nods to publishing and stuff that we rarely used to get, and now we're getting like a bunch of. Is really really good, but also thematically, right, how it ties into how these characters are expressing themselves and their ideologies through history and art, which is very Thrawn like in many ways through
Yeah.
that scene.
Yeah.
Because Krennic obviously talking about authoritarianism and everything, and like how I forgot the exact details that he's talking about, but like how these cultures aren't expressing themselves or are barbaric because of their practices,
Mhm.
and Mon mean like, oh well, were they like that, or was that their culture that would the invaders cast upon them and stuff like that. So I was just like, this is
And her always trying to argue about like individuality
yeah,
and
Yeah.
freedom and all these things, and letting cultures be.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
It's so beautiful, right? But then also intercut with Clea talking about the book, right? That
Yeah.
she's trying to get the listening device out of, but how it's a
Yeah.
book where blindness was a gift, and
Mhm.
and in many ways, right, very attuned to what the Force is. Obi-Wan Kenobi telling Luke, don't trust your eyes. Your eyes can deceive you. Trust in the Force
Yeah.
and not don't trust your eyes. So those connections in that way, and being like the physical manifestations of things are sometimes lies, and you have to feel for the truth, which was so poignant and telling, and especially like with this tense scene that you kind of have to rewatch to get all those pieces of nuance from, but then kind of crescendoing into Mon Mothma and then Krennic talking about the exact same thing, but then Krennic getting that jab in at the end. She's like, oh, like blindness being a gift. I could name a couple of people that are like that or something to that effect, which one, hilarious, but also very mean. But
Yeah.
only a queen like Krennic could deliver that line in that way.
Exactly. Exactly. I would like pay very good money to see Thrawn in this show. Like I think that he would
He
have
would
been
fit. He would fit.
100%.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, especially with knowing how him and Krennic are
Yeah.
and I think it's either alliances or treason. I don't remember the name.
Treason.
Treason.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do wonder if maybe they'll drop like a hint about that, but who knows? I that outside of that, like that's one of my favorite stories, and it connects so much to Rogue One now because of the
Mhm.
Death Star.
Right.
So I don't know.
And Rebels, because on the one side
Exactly.
is the Krennic stuff with Rogue One, but then on the other side is the Thrawn stuff with the TIE Defender program.
Exactly.
But obviously this whole show we could be talking about every single
No.
aspect of it forever. But I wanted to save kind of like the
That
ending
final
for the
scene.
ending and talk
Hmm.
about Bix and Cassian, and particularly Bix's big moment of, I don't want to call it revenge. I would want to call it healing.
Yeah.
So
Triumph.
Yeah.
I think it's not my
Mhm.
place to talk about Bix's journey right now because Savi, maybe you could talk about it better than I could. But what was your reaction to seeing Bix's journey from being the lowest low and taking whatever magic
Ownership of her
liquid
life.
that was, and then seeing
Yeah.
the end when confrontation with Dr. Gorst?
Yeah. Well, her whole arc is I think very important. Nani, I don't know if you agree, but like as a
I
woman,
agree with you. Yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
I think that it's one of the most beautiful aspects that they're handling, I think, very well, especially at this part. It solidified that it's not just hurting Bix, they're helping her grow as
Right.
her character. And I, from the beginning, the very beginning, the first episode where we see Bix have that nightmare of Dr. Gorse taking the
Right.
blanket off of her body, automatically, like, I was like, this is a woman who feels like she's lost her autonomy, who feels like she is out of control of her life. Because the only thing that she had to protect herself in the hotel on Ferrix was a blanket. So
Hmm.
that whole aspect of Bix's character then, and then now seeing her, like, can we curse on this? I almost said a bad word. Okay.
Yeah.
Her like whole badassery, like this
Oh yeah.
moment of her taking back like what's hers. Like her autonomy was always hers. And I think it was so satisfying, or not, I know it was so satisfying because Dr. Gore says, "Oh, I think I know you, or I recognize you." And a small sliver of his life is Bix's entire life. And I think that her killing him and basically like giving him a taste of his own medicine was her literally like grabbing it by the cojones. And
Or the bollocks for our, British speaking audience.
taking it back. And I freaking love that it was with Cassian by her side and not like he let her do it. He was there and he was with her for support, but he was like, this is her moment and I want her to have this. And him going to Luthen and the both of them kind of bickering back and forth about it, and then it coming to fruition was just a really, really satisfying moment for her character. And I'm really so glad that she got to have it, because I think if anybody deserved that type of vengeance and revenge, though I wouldn't necessarily call it that, but I think it was
justice.
Her. Yes, exactly. That's the word. Yeah. She really, really deserved that. And I'm really happy for her, because watching those moments with her with Cassian, she so badly like wants normalcy and to build a home, and she puts plants out and like she wants to cook dinner and go for walks. Like this is a really, really great stepping stone where she'll start to feel safe again, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree with everything that you said. I mean, to me, Bix is such an important character. I mean, season 1, she was so strong and independent, and she didn't need anybody. I mean, she was stronger than Cassian as a character. Like Cassian's the one that's kind of broken and falling apart, and she's his rock. And then obviously after all the trauma and everything that happened to her, I mean, that would break anybody. And she was able to like come back, and she was still there, but she was kind of a ghost of herself because, she wasn't able to get through the trauma. And then Cassian's being overprotective, which makes it kind of worse. Luthen is treating her with bean sass, like we say, which made it worse. So she had lost all self-confidence. And then every time she's alone, she's plagued by so many nightmares that she can't really see the way forward.
Yeah.
Which, like I was saying, that's why it was so hard to watch a woman, like such a strong woman, like go through such a hard time. But I mean, that happens all the time. You don't know what kind of trigger event it's going to happen that is just going to get you stuck. So I was really terrified when they first announced that Dr. Gorse was going to be turned into a program, because, it's not enough to just have him as ISB. Now we're going to, do a conveyor belt of Dr. Gorse that are going to be everywhere. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the worst possible thing that can happen to Bix. So I was really scared where that arc was going. But then we see Dr. Gorst with his cake or whatever he has. And then when he first walks in and there's Bix right behind him, I start thinking it's like another dream. I didn't really think it was actually happening.
Yeah.
I watched that whole scene, and then as she's walking out and it actually ends, I had to rewind. I was like, oh my God, that was actually happening. Wait, I have to watch it with detail again from the beginning. Because, okay, how awesome is it that she uses his own line against him as well? It's going to feel... it's not going to be, it's very quick, but it's going to feel like forever for you. So like strap on. And then she just like walks away. No, no like drama to it. She's just like, she turns it on, leaves him there. And then you can just see him silently screaming, you don't even hear the yell. And then she like badassly walks out, shoots the guy, keeps walking. Then you can see, and it's not, she doesn't like even necessarily look, like she's just walking, and then the screen like angles out and you see Andor just walking pace to pace with her, not behind her, not in front of her, just like equals walking out together, takes out the bomb clicker, and then whoop, neither of them look away, badass walking as the entire building explodes. Music crescendos beautifully. with like the theme of the show intermixed into it, into this like really cool new kind of techno version of it that we've been getting. And cut to black. Perfect. I was clapping, screaming. Like, I was so excited. It's so good. I feel like it's so vindicated that Bix just, like you said, grabbed that ass by the cojones and just destroyed him with his own instrument. And, you know, got her, you know, safety, her ownership of her life back. So I cannot wait to see what's going to happen with her and Cassian going forward. I feel like he's so jaded in Rogue One that her end is probably going to be tragic, but
I'm
optimistic for now.
Trying not to look at Goose.
I know.
Because he saw it, it's like, Goose,
I'm a Vincian on this one. I'm geoed. You know, there's no expressions on my face. For all you High Republic fans, I hope you got it. For those that didn't, read the books, please. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna contribute to the Bix arc. I think it was in the both of yours more capable hands. I think I could not add anything better to it. So thank you for your words on that and the journey, right, that
Bix forever
has taken. But as you said, Nani, right, that closes one chapter of healing for Bix, but then opens new chapters for all the characters going into now the end game of the final season of Andor 2, Andor season 2. So you know, this is the part where we like to call responsible speculation. Like I said at the beginning,
which you can't participate in.
I cannot participate in because I unfortunately know where we're going. I mean, we all know where it's going because Tony Gilroy has kind of said that. But you know, I know the beats. I will not participate and try not to react. But for both of y'all, like, what do you hope / expect to see now moving forward with the characters? And saying, oh, the Ghorman massacre and leading into Rogue One, that doesn't count. We already know that. So in terms of character beats and places the characters are going, what are your crazy theories that we're going to see in Arc 3 and 4?
Okay, well, he hasn't shown up yet, but I'm a huge Melshi fan. Like since Rogue One, like he was my Glup Shido before Glup Shido was titled Glup Shido, and knowing that he was coming back into the story to expand more upon him and Cassian's relationship meant a lot to me. Especially because I just love the idea of Cassian having friends and family, and I think that was always really important to me as a fan of his character, especially when there wasn't a lot about him back then. But I don't know, they showed that photo of him and Melshi and K2 at the table, like playing some sort of game and food, and I'm really excited to see them between Narkina and Yavin, or whenever Melshi comes in, because I don't know, and how their relationship gets to the point where Melshi is all in to Scarif. I think that's one of my most anticipated plots of the show.
That's a good one. I wasn't expecting that answer, so I like it.
Awesome.
I like it.
Thank you.
I've really been missing the droids. Like, I really need some K2SO back. I need B2 Emo, because we saw him a little bit in that first arc, but it was just kind of him missing Cassian. We didn't get to see a lot of his like awesome corpse and stuff. So I mean, in a lot of these shows, the droids have really been some of my favorite characters. So we have 2 arcs left. I'm just really excited to see them come back. I do kind of want to see more Bail Organa and to see how he comes into this, you know, in between what's going on, because I feel like Mon has kind of lost her footing, and especially where she is with Luthen after, especially, you know, losing her childhood friend in the past arc, kind of, you know, because of herself, you know, and her trying to find a solution, and Luthen being like, no, loose end, he has to die. You know, and where she is with, you know, her daughter got married and probably into another very unhappy marriage, and you know how she's going to transition from the Mon that is still pretty much the same one we saw in the first season, how she transitions into the Mon we know later on as the leader of the rebellion. So, and then, you know, I feel like we're going to get a lot of characters' demise by the end of this
That's
we've
a
already lost.
very High Republic thing to say, right?
Well,
there.
I mean, we've already lost 2 huge characters in these first 2 arcs very painfully and sadly. So I feel like there's a lot more coming. So I feel like it's going to be rough, but I'm really excited to see how I'm assuming they're going to do, 1 year leap in
Correct.
every arc. So we're going to end up, right before Rogue One at the end.
Correct.
So I'm really excited to see how they get it so that transition will seem seamless.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I don't know either. I wish I did. I wish I did, and I wish I could speculate, but alas, I won't this time around because we have been talking far too long, and we could talk even longer because there's so much and so many little
That
details.
is one of the problems about having 3 episodes at a time.
Yeah,
it's hard
we
to cram everything
not.
into an episode of ours when there's 3 amazing episodes happening. Yeah.
And this is not the 5-hour podcast, unfortunately. This is the reasonably timed podcast. So for now, unfortunately, it will be like our ending time for Andor arc 2, which we're unofficially calling it. And maybe we should come up with some unofficial names for all the arcs, since we don't have any yet. So maybe that's some good homework for all of us. But before we do sign out, thanks for everyone for listening. Share, like, subscribe, all those things. But before we leave, Savi, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you have going on, what Stardust Records has going on, what
where we can find
from you, and where we can find you.
Okay. I never know how to answer this because we we do it however the wind takes us or whatever.
Erratically.
Exactly. Stardust Records will be covering Andor as well. I believe are going to do it as a season rather than as arcs, but I think that we're still revisiting the opportunity. We had a panel at Celebration that we will be posting about. We got to interview Tom from Random House Worlds, and that was a really fun interview that we got to do.
Darth Internus, I think, right? Is his handle?
Yes. Yeah. Wonderful person, and really great interview. So that's coming. You can find me at Andorisms on Twitter and Instagram. And not
on Blue Sky. You're not joining us on our liberal utopia.
I am on Blue Sky.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I do like it there a lot. It's just not everyone has migrated quite yet, but
that's true.
Yeah.
Hopefully soon, because I don't know, the Twitter sphere.
The bricks and screws people over there.
Yeah, exactly. They're scary. The numbers are scary. But I'm excited to finish this season. It's Andor's the whole reason why we started the podcast, so it'll be a very bittersweet reason
when it ends.
I know, but it's gonna live on in our hearts forever.
Right. Don't be sad that it's over. Be glad that it happened.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a good way to look at it. I love that. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been an honor.
Thank you for not only just being our real internet and real life friend, but also now being our podcasting friend. So definitely the first time, but not the last. So expect to be invited back on Triad to talk about more Star Wars deliciousness, because even though Andor's going to be over, Star Wars is still going to provide.
We still have to revisit Rogue One. I feel like we've talked about doing it.
That is true. Yeah. There is a retrospective to do about Rogue One when it's recontextualized with Andor season 2. So we'll see. We'll see about that.
And you guys will have to come on to Stardust, and especially to celebrate the 10 years of Rogue One. So yeah, that'd be so awesome.
Oh my God,
we'd be honored.
That's next year. Oh my God, time.
I know. Time flies.
Unrelenting.
I know.
Yep. 20 years of revenge.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I know. I'm seeing that right after we hang up.
Oh, okay.
Oh, amazing.
Great. I saw it in 40X and it was amazing. So let's let you get to that.
Okay.
Savi, thank you so much for joining us at Triad of the Force. It was amazing. Let us know, everybody, what you're thinking about Andor season 2. Talking about it with you was fantastic. Bigs for life. We love you. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know what you think about Andor so far. Let us know what you think about our chica Bix and everybody else in the show so far, what you think is going to happen in the next 2 arcs, how you feel about the way that it's been released, and what, what Andor means to you, and Rogue One and everything else Star Wars. So until next time, may the Force be with you.